stumbled upon 8 true Craigslist horror stories that will haunt my nights forever. I never should have opened that door. It was late. I had just settled down for a quiet night, scrolling through Craigslist, when I stumbled upon an ad titled Free Stuff Pickup Only. The allure of free things always pulls at my heartstrings. Like a moth to a flame, curiosity tugged at me. The ad detailed that the items were outside a rundown house at the end of our street. They said you could take what you wanted, but no one was supposed to enter. I can still hear the creaking of the porch steps as I approached. The air was thick and stale, mixed with the scent of decay. Shadows lurked in every corner, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to know. My guts twisted into knots, but I pressed on. I felt watched, as if dozens of eyes were tracing my every move. As I reached the door, it hung slightly ajar, almost inviting me in. Just a peek, I told myself. The moment I pushed it open, it swung wide, letting out a cold gust that sent shivers down my spine. I stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed by the darkness that seemed to pulse inside. My heart raced. What was I hoping to find? A treasure? I felt foolish. The echoes of the house wrapped around me like a dense fog. A stillness enveloped the air, broken only by the occasional scuttle of a rat or the rustle of something unseen. I could barely breathe. Then, a strange noise echoed from within, soft, like a whisper, but twisted. I stepped inside, hoping the thrill of discovery would overwrite the dread coiling in my chest. The floor creaked beneath my feet, the sound jarring in the heavy silence. Then I noticed how the shadows danced, shapes morphing and reforming with each flicker of moonlight sneaking through the broken windows. Something moved in the corner of my eye. I turned, but it was gone. My skin crawled. I could hear my heartbeat now, pounding in my ears, drowning out all other sounds. Suddenly, a glass shattered somewhere in the house. My pulse quickened. Instinct screamed at me to run, but nerves clawed at my will, and my feet felt glued to the floor. A cold draft lingered, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. I could taste the fear in the air, bitter and metallic. I turned back to the door, but it slammed shut. I jumped. A scream caught in my throat. I was trapped. The house seemed alive, breathing down my neck, teasing me with ancient secrets. I felt a presence, something lurking just beyond my vision. My breath quickened as I strained to listen, a low growl echoing through the corridor. My mind raced. Sweat trickled down my back. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but fear rooted me in place. And then it appeared, a figure in the darkness, eyes glinting like dead stars. My heart stopped. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I had never laid eyes on anything like it. The figure shifted slightly, a warped silhouette framed by the darkness, its movements jerky and unnatural. The mesmerizing glint in its eyes bore no warmth, only an awful, insatiable hunger. A chill ran through my limbs as I fought the urge to flee, forcing myself to stay rooted, even as my instincts screamed to run. Who are you? I managed to croak out, each word feeling like a betrayal to my body. The figure swayed, and a faint, guttural laughter echoed from deep within its throat, chilling to the bone, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Then it dropped lower, closer to the floor, its grotesque form melding into the shadows. The air thickened, suffocating me, every breath coming shallow and quick. I tasted blood on my tongue. It didn't feel real, not a single part of this nightmare did. I strained to turn my gaze away, yet there was a magnetic pull, urging me to look closer, to understand what I was up against. And then came that sound, Againa whisper, soft yet malicious. Stay, it called, the voice of 1,000 lost souls entwined into one discordant plea. Instinctively, I took a step back. Don't run. It slithered out again, now a demand rather than a suggestion. Instinctively, my pulse quickened. I could feel the thudding against my ribs. Fear coursed through me, mingling with curiosity, a sick cocktail I didn't want to drink. I was lost, stuck in this house that thrummed with a life of its own. And outside, the moon hung high. Oblivious to what was transpiring within these walls, I caught movement behind the creature. In the dim light, I could make out another form, more shadows, swirling and darting, all converging into a grotesque collection of limbs and hungry mouths. They seemed to bounce off the walls, skittering like dark insects, converging toward me from all sides. Help us, they whispered in tandem, their voices overlapping, each syllable carrying a layer of anguish that clawed at my heart. Panic rose inside me like a wave, surging higher, threatening to drown me in its depths. I stumbled backward, adrenaline igniting every nerve in my body. My mind screamed that this was a hideous trick, but a part of me was also horrifically curious. Was I seeing the faces of those lost to the house? Were they trapped like me? Before I could process any further, the first figure surged forward with an inhuman speed, arms outstretched toward me, fingers elongated like talons. I darted to my right, glancing back only to see dark forms beginning to rise from the floor and walls, pulling themselves forth with a frantic hunger. Leave now. Get out. A voice shattered my thoughts, a desperate warning, a flash of humanity amid the horror. I turned toward the sound, a whisper born from the shadows, but the specter lunged again, too close for comfort. I whirled, slicing through the darkness, desperately seeking any way out. The door. It receded farther away with every frantic step. I could almost hear the mocking laughter of the darkness encircling me, drowning my will, and then a scream erupted from somewhere deep within the house, a raw, agonizing wail that echoed against the brittle walls. It was the voice of someone who once inhabited this place, resonating with sorrow, mingling with the dreadful laughter of the maleficent creatures around me. It clawed at my sanity, and as I stumbled unsteadily, I found myself standing at the edge of the hall. But there, oh God, there was something else emerging from the shadows, formless, yet unmistakably human, an amalgamation of fear and despair. It looked right through me, its eyes swirling with torment like the maelstrom deep within the abyss. Then came an impossible revelation. It began to morph, twisting into a reflective version of myself, a mockery carved from my own fears. Join us, it rasped softly, a sinister invitation laden with a promise of eternal suffering. My breath caught, a tightness constricting my chest as I felt the walls closing in around me. In a final moment of desperate clarity, I sprinted away from the echoing calls, the haunting faces, the sinister laughter, but as I turned to flee, I tripped over something long and cold, a skeletal hand. "I'm coming for you," it whispered, the darkness laughing in glee as I fell, the truth dawning heavy upon me. I was not the only one trapped here. The floorboards creaked beneath the weight of my terror as I clawed my way back to my feet, but even as I pushed through the barrel of despair, I could hear a whispering chorus spiraling into chaos behind me, growing louder and more desperate, screaming my name, urging me to join them. And then, like a bolt of lightning, the house shuddered, and the walls themselves seemed to bend inward, glowing with a vivid, sorcerous darkness that engulfed me. I was not alone, and soon I might not be myself. The world around me had blurred, a dark, twisting carnival of writhing shadows that danced with an unnatural rhythm, choking the light in a heavy suffocation. The skeletal hand, unnervingly cold against my palm, clawed at my mind, pulling me into realms I refused to comprehend. I wrenched myself away and stumbled down the hall, each frantic step echoing the soft, haunting whispers of those who had come before, met those who had found an end here, in this cursed domain. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a stale perfume of desperation lingering like a supplicant's breath. My pulse throbbed loudly in my ears, a savage drum signaling my impending doom. I pressed on, desperately searching for any glimpse of escape, yet the optical illusion of thousands of eyes bore down upon me, watching, weighing my resolve. Suddenly, a doorway appeared to my left, its outline glinting as if beckoning me with sweet assurance. Driven by instinct, I turned and rushed through it, finding myself in a small room that felt alive, pulsating with dark energy. There was no ceiling, only a swirling darkness that beckoned me, promising covered horrors and secrets best left undisturbed. In the center of the room lay a mirror with a cracked surface reflecting back not only my shattered visage but also a semblance of what could have been overshadowed by a ghostly copy, a phantom of a life unclaimed. I shivered, its spectral presence jarring my senses. Desperately, I tried to look away, to unravel the grip it seemed to have on my soul. But it was too late. Not so fast, it whispered with a companionable smile that didn't belong anywhere except in my nightmares. You've been invited to the feast. With horror, I realized the fragrance that had enveloped my senses had morphed into something else entirely, something akin to death. The ground began to quiver beneath my feet, and the door behind me vanished, swallowed by the shadowy walls like a secret long forgotten. Isolated and exposed, I was confronted by the insatiable emptiness that had permeated this house, a ravenous void poised to consume my very essence. A sudden scream pierced the silence, resonating through the mirror, reverberating against the walls that absorbed the sound as if thirsty for my dread. The cries amplified into a cacophony of agony, and for a moment, I thought I could distinguish the face of a woman, a living echo trapped in that glass prison. Hair wild and eyes darting between desperation and madness. Help me, she implored. Still hungry, I stumbled back, horror flooding my senses. But something flickered in her gaze, a recognition and understanding that coursed between us like an electric current. I reached out, drawn to her trembling hands, desperate to pull her back to the safety of reality. I'll save you, I screamed, yet my voice fell silent in my own ears, swallowed by the laughter echoing from the shadows. Let her go, the mirror whispered, becoming a living thing before me, its surface rippling, mockingly displaying my failure to grasp the gravity of my choice. The shadows shivered, curling like fingers around her character as she writhed desperately. Her screams filtered into the darkness. It became apparent that she was not alone. Shades emerged from all corners, their mouths agape in a fashion that reminded me chillingly of the figure I had encountered earlier. With a surge of primal instinct, I turned away, wanting to wrench myself from this grotesque display, but the shadows shifted towards me, solidifying into grotesque faces, mouth after mouth twisting into an agonizing plea. Join us, friend, they chanted, their voices overlapping, a macabre lullaby that dug into my psyche. I raced toward the mirror, demanding to break its claustrophobic hold. I would not join their wretchedness. I wouldn't become another face lost to the darkness. I refuse. I won't become one of you, I screamed, hurling myself at the mirror's cold surface. But as my hands made contact, the room exploded into blinding light, an explosion of anguish and despair, reverberating through the very fibers of my being. The barriers between realms thinned, and for a fleeting moment, I saw their faces twisted, contorted, and clawing for my spirit. And then, silence fell, a heavy blanket draped over the room, muffling the cries, as if the house itself was holding its breath in anticipation. My heart raced. I could feel a new presence rolling in, darker than the others, more powerful, bending the fabric of this place. I turned and there it stood, the warped figure from the depths of my nightmares, now fully formed, its glinting eyes locked onto mine with newfound ferocity. You've come to stay, it crooned eerily, its mouth contorting into a smile that stretched too wide, too inhuman, before I could recoil. The mirror shattered, shards spiraling through the air like daggers, each one catching a flicker of light. I was too late. The shadows surged toward me, an avalanche of despair, and in that moment, the house unleashed the most terrifying truth of all. You never had a choice, and with that, I felt my soul begin to unravel, pieces of me scattering like the glass, leaving nothing behind but a hollow echo of the person I once was. The aftermath of the mirror's shattering left me suspended in a realm of chaos. The air, taut with despair, crackled as if the very essence of existence was being torn asunder. I reached up to shield my face from the flying shards, but they cut through the darkness, finding their mark on my skin, sharp and jagged. With each slice, New shades intertwined with the specters around me, their anguished faces merging into a grotesque collage. The luminescence of the shattered mirror belied the shadows gathering, turning them into formsvile caricatures of what they might have once been. They lunged at me, claws extended, seeking to reclaim what I had desperately tried to escape. I threw my arms out in defense, feeling their cold grip snatch at my wrists, desperate to draw me into their collective misery. "Join us," they shrieked, their voices rising in a cacophony that reverberated through my skull. A chaotic chorus of despair that threatened to push me to the brink of madness. But just as I recoiled from their touch, I felt something behind me, a swirling mass of darkness pulling me toward an unseen depth. It was a void, vast and dark, a chasm promising oblivion. "Not yet," I gasped, forcing my legs to move, but the cold darkness constricted, tightening around me like a vice, dragging me ever closer to its insatiable maw. I stumbled forward into the swirling mass, frantically searching for anything to hold on to, hoping to find a tangible escape within the intangible horror around me. Then I felt a warmth, a flicker of light born from within the depths, glimmering like a dying star in a void of nothingness. I lunged for it, clawing through the shadows that tried to consume me. As my fingers brushed against the warmth, I felt a rush of clarity amid the chaos, an ethereal spark igniting my very core. I didn't understand this light, but I craved it, thrumming with a determination that surged anew within me. Then came a low growl, reverberating through the air, rich with malice. "You shouldn't have done that," a voice rasped, crystallizing from the darkness. The shadows recoiled, nearly forming a wall around me, separating me from that flicker of safety. Within the swirling mass emerged the familiar warped figure, its eyes glinting with fury, those ghastly orbs burning with an otherworldly hunger. "You think you can resist?" it taunted, each word a chilling echo that apprehended my desperate resolve. "The feast isn't just for the dead. It craves your spirit too. Give in, let the darkness take you. It will be liberating to know," I shouted, forcing myself to magnify the light I felt within me, willing it to grow, pushing against the throng of darkness that swarmed like locusts, eager to devour my defiance. It pulsed stubbornly, a heartbeat against the encroaching despair, and with every ounce of willpower, I pulled it into focus, feeding off my dread and despair like the shadows craved to do. The figure lurched forward, anger etched deeply upon its visage. "You defy me? You will pay the price." With a single movement, it raised its arms high, summoning the shadows around us into a tormented whirlwind, faces emerging and contorting as they surged back toward me, howling in anguish as they reeked of ages spent in torment. As the razor-edged screams collided with my flesh, I keenly felt shadows scraping at the dregs of my essence. My legs trembled as I fought against their grasp, tearing at the veil that held me. No longer a mere observer, I felt the swell of my own fear morph into a weapon. Me fear became a vast ocean, undulating through the darkness. The light inside me became a blazing sun, blinding and fierce, yearning to consume the shadows. With a primal roar, I thrust forward, the wave of illumination crashing against the shadow horde. Shards of darkness ricocheted off the radiant energy, causing the warped figure to falter, its form wavering under the force as it snarled with rage. But just as hope flickered brighter within me, the room shuddered violently, the very fabric of reality ripping apart, revealing glimpses of a wider abyss beyond all the lives lost, the screams of tormented souls blending into the eternal cavity of despair. The warmth I had harnessed began to fracture under the pressure, splintering just like the mirror, threatening to extinguish entirely. To end that moment of reckoning, a hand shot out from the depths of the swirling darkness, a hand not from the shadows, but one encased in the same spectral glow I had found before. It grasped my wrist, and my breath caught as I stared into the eyes of the woman from the mirror, her expression wrought with both hope and horror. "Take my hand," she screamed, her eyes wide with urgency. "Together, we can." But before I could make a choice, the ground beneath me opened into a yawning chasm, and I felt myself tumbling, spiraling into that oppressive darkness. As I screamed, clutching at the air, I caught one final glimpse of the woman's anguished face, swallowed by the shadow. And the knoll fell silent as I descended into the depths, The shadows coiled around me in glee, whispering sweet promises of what lay ahead, as icy fingers slipped through the cracks of my resolve, and the last remnants of light began to fade. The darkness enveloped me, as I was left with one chilling thought. What if I never truly escaped at all? The echo of my scream ricocheted through the abyss, swallowed by an all-encompassing silence that held its breath, waiting. My body thudded against a cold, solid surface, and the ground shivered under me as though the very earth realized it had just accepted another lost soul. Sweeping the darkness from my eyes, I found myself surrounded by the remnants of all that had been a ghostly panorama stretching into the void. Shattered pieces of glass floated around me, glimmering ghostly reflections of my own image fractured into countless versions, a kaleidoscope of myself, each mirroring a different emotion. Beneath it all, a low hum pulsed, a primordial vibration that seemed tethered to the very heartbeat of despair. The whispers began, soft at first, mere threads of sound that wove through the fabric of reality, each syllable a chilling echo of my trepidation. "Welcome," they cooed, a symphony of distorted voices that scratched at the edges of my sanity. "You're home now." I scrambled to my feet, panic clawing at my throat. There were no walls, no ceiling, only a void where time and space twisted and melded into one. I reached out instinctively for anything familiar. My fingers brushed against a worn, cracked doorframe that appeared from the shadows and pulled me into another realm, a grotesque echo of the home I once knew. Moldy walls swelled and pulsed with an almost sentient hunger, whispering secrets long buried. The air thickened, laden with the weight of memories, lost laughter, shouts of anger, and the quiet moments that now felt tainted. Every creak of the floorboards beneath my feet was a sinister promise, reminding me of the pain that lurked in places we dare not tread. Suddenly, the walls seemed to come alive, shifting and bending, revealing faces buried in torment, eyes glazed over in vacuous despair. They reached out, their mouths opening in silent pleas, yearning for release. A chill gripped my heart as I stepped further inside, the air growing colder, a faint draft stirring echoes of my past around me. "Help us!" A voice emerged from the horde of faces, unhinged and raw. "You're one of us now." The words slithered through me like ice, and I recoiled instinctively, turning back in search of escape. But the door I had entered was gone, swallowed up by the pulsating walls. "For too long. We have waited." Another voice joined, layered with contempt and brittle laughter. "You brought this upon yourself. You shattered the mirror. You broke the seal." Every instinct told me to flee, yet my legs felt rooted to the ground as the spectral presence coalesced around me, encircling me in a suffocating embrace, warmth bleeding from my spirit while the air grew frigid. "Your fear draws us near. Let us exist through you." Rushing back into my mind were the glimmers of the woman from the mirror. Somewhere, she was still fighting against the tide. Could I summon her again? I clenched my fists and closed my eyes, straining to focus on the warmth she had shown, meth bond that had flickered between us. Slowly, I began to summon fragments of that familiar light, crafting a bubble of resilience against the suffocating darkness. Yet the entities surged, drawn by my defiance, shrieking with twisted glee. "Struggle all you want, little one, but every effort feeds our existence." They crept closer, gnashing their teeth and clawing at my resolve, each ounce of resistance an opportunity to feast on my fear. Then, through the hostile cacophony, I heard her voice again, the woman, compelling and desperate. "Remember us. Remember the light." It pierced through the fog, igniting a flicker of hope buried deep beneath the layers of dread. With newfound clarity, I focused fiercely on her face, the warmth I had felt, the way she fought against the darkness. It blurred the lurking shadows for a heartbeat, spiraling into a vortex of swirling light, until she appeared once more, bathed in that ethereal glow. But the moment was fleeting, and darkness began to warp her form. "Quickly, trust me," she urged, her voice rising above the din. "Concentrate. We need to connect our spirits." Before I could respond, the horde lunged, shattering my focus. The shadows clawed at me, invoking primal terror, their cold whispers mingling with the sickly choice of my own inner chaos, to succumb or to resist. Desperation clawed at my gut, Suddenly, I felt a sharp sting on my wrist, a surge of cold as something grabbed my arm with a vice-like grip, a grotesque amalgamation of faces emerging in rush from the surrounding darkness, fusing into a single, monstrous entity. Its breath was rancid, its voice a distorted chorus, gloating, "You're ours now. Prepare for the ultimate descent." I squirmed against the icy grip, dread clawing at my heart as I fought to remember the light. But as I struggled, it slipped through my fingers like sand, the warmth extinguishing beneath the weight of despair. And then, the darkness split open with an agonizing roar, and a vast chasm filled with writhing shadows loomed before me. I was being pulled toward it, the cacophony swelling, heart-stopping, a dark promise of eternal captivity. And in that split second, just as I began to lose myself entirely, I locked eyes with her one last time. Her expression was both heartbreaking and fierce, filled with a fervent urgency that radiated out toward me, as if she too was fighting against the tides of fate. That in an instant, everything faded to black. The last shred of warmth flickered like a dying candle as I plummeted into the depthless abyss, swallowed whole by the void, and the sensation washed over me. A suffocating fear attaching itself to the fraying edges of my spirit, whispering promises of never-ending darkness. But then a jarring thought struck through the quiet, piercing the murk. What if the darkness had its own terrible secrets to unveil? I found myself standing on an unfamiliar street, lined with warped houses and cracked pavement, each structure leaning precariously as if caught in the throes of a long-forgotten storm. Felt wrong, more like a painting gone awry than a living neighborhood. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, as if the world held its breath, waiting for something to emerge from the shadows. The memories of my last moments surged through me like phantoms, the echoes of distorted laughter and pleading whispers still clinging to my skin. I shook my head to clear it, only to have the tumultuous shadows of my thoughts deepen. The sensation of those alien fingers still gripped my wrist, a chill that radiated through my bones. I could feel that sinister presence lurking just beyond the periphery, watching, waiting. As I took a hesitant step, I noticed the sidewalks rippling underfoot, as though the ground itself breathed with life. The houses around me pulsed ominously, their windows dark and hollow like empty sockets gazing with hungry yearning. Each door appeared ajar, as if inviting me to enter or warning me to stay away. An uneasy dread coiled tighter around my heart, urging me to run, to escape, but curiosity tethered me in place like an innocent moth drawn to a cruel flame. I wandered towards the nearest house, the door creaking open at my touch, revealing darkness that seemed to breathe within. The smell of mildew and decay hit me like a wave, but I stepped inside, the warmth of my skin contrasting sharply with the cold dread that wrapped its bony fingers around my back. As I entered, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing my fate. The interior was a gruesome parody of a home. Pictures hung askew on the walls, their contents obscured, yet something about them felt all too familiar. I reached out to straighten one, heart thudding as recognition flooded my senses. It was a family portrait, family. But their faces were twisted in grotesque expressions, mouths gaping in eternal screams, eyes wide with unearthly terror. I staggered back, the room blurring as the memories flooded back, stabbing at me with pain and regret. Before I could gather my thoughts, shadows emerged, coiling around me, whispering secrets and sins of my past. "Do you remember?" they taunted, their voices a seductive caress, laced with venom. "Everything you tried to forget we remember." The air grew heavier, punctuated by a faint echo of children's laughter that spiraled into the distance, tinged with melancholy. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the sound twisted into a cacophony of cries, a haunting reminder of lives once cherished, now twisted and lost to fury. "Help us. Free us." The words slipped through the shadows like silken tendrils, caressing my senses with sickening familiarity. I could feel the weight of their sorrow, the oppressive grief clawing at my throat, as sharp as glass. With a shudder, I tore my gaze away from the portrait and backed into the throat of the house, only to find the walls shivering, distorting as faces contorted into anguished expressions, their eyes fixated solely on me. I gripped the wall, my heart racing wildly, caught in the glare of countless souls that had become ensnared in this accursed realm. Then I heard Ida's soft rustling behind me. With dread pooling in my stomach, I turned slowly, bracing myself for what I might see. The darkness roiled, and from it emerged a figure, pale and gaunt, dressed in the tattered remnants of a once bright coat. It wore a mask of impenetrable shadows that flickered with life, its edges lined with whispers too quiet to understand. "Have you come for them?" it asked, its voice a hollow echo that flitted through the air like a moth to light. "Do you seek to join their sorrow?" My breath quickened, the specter's presence pressing heavily upon me. "Who are you?" I trembled, clutching the banister of the staircase that spiraled upwards into a maelstrom of darkness. "I am the gatekeeper of lost hearts," it replied, gesturing with a skeletal hand towards the portraits lining the walls. "Here lies the agony of countless souls wrapped in the tapestry of regret and disbelief. Their existence hinges on your choices." I in that moment, the shadows deepened, swirling and revealing fleeting images of my memories flashed before my eyes. Laughter turned to screams, joy warped into misery, life transformed into decay, as the specter's words bound themselves around me in an unbreakable chain. "What do I have to do?" I whispered, dread coiling tighter around my heart. "You must choose a soul to release to the light. Only then can you find your way forward." The figure's voice stirred an unsettling mixture of hope and despair. "But for every soul you free, another shall take its place. Will you bear that burden?" A chill snaked through meth weight of choices that bore the sins of my existence. I stared at the walls, the faces pleading for an end to their suffering. But beneath their hot ache of hope lay something darker, a hint of malice entwined with their pleading. I felt the choking shadow begin to engulf me, the avarice of the lost souls pressing closer, the specter grinning behind its veil. "Time is fleeting, child. Choose now or be consumed by your own regrets forever." A rush of terror surged through me as the walls began to close in, the shadows pulsating with an energy that threatened to drown me whole. I staggered back, heart hammering in my chest. Realizing my decision loomed closer, the ever-looming darkness awaited my answer. I could feel the feasting anticipation of the shadows consuming my very being. And then, in that moment of absolute dread, I saw your face among the writhing forms, a manifestation of the bond that had been forged through unimaginable pain. "Choose me," a voice whispered from the abyss, threading its way through the chaos, a soft but unyielding command that clutched at my heart. I struggled against the tide of the suffocating void. The whispers of the lost echoed around me, a terrifying chorus drowning my thoughts. But in that heart-stopping moment, as the darkness threatened to swallow me whole, I had to decide. Who would I save? With terror boiling in my veins, I knew my choice could lead to salvation or irrevocable doom. I hesitated, my breath hitching in my throat as the faces on the walls whispered louder, their cries merging into a single voice that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. The specter's gaze pierced through me, growing impatient, while the shadows writhed, feeding off my fear. "You must choose," it urged, an insidious delight curling its voice. Time twisted, seconds stretching into agonizing minutes. My heart raced, memories of laughter, warmth, and love flickering through my mind alongside images of despair, of faces I hadn't dared to remember. Who would I condemn to endless suffering? Who would I save? In desperation, I turned back to the portrait of my family. The grotesque expressions had morphed to reveal familiar anguish. I reached out to touch the frame, the wood splintering beneath my fingers as I lost myself in their eyes, each one a window into sorrow, twisted by regret and pain. "Please, I can't choose," I cried, my voice barely rising above the din of souls calling for release. "Then they're lost," the specter hissed, tilting its head, shadows shifting like blurring smoke. "You will remain here, and their agony will be yours to bear forever." A wave of horror crashed through me. I wrestled with my conscience, grappling with the two choices before me: to save one and sacrifice countless others, or to let them all down with my indecision. I peered deeper, desperation sucking me in as I surveyed the faces of my family, ghostly reflections of days long gone, filled with laughter that had long since been twisted into anguish. "Choose," the specter commanded again, stepping forward. In its advance, flickers of memory threatened to overwhelm me. Parents, my brother, my childhood laughter fading into nightmarish echoes, succumbed to the curse that entwined around their souls. Suddenly, one face stood apart from the others, me younger sibling, eyes wide and brimming with an innocence lost too soon. "Help me," the voice pleaded, hauntingly familiar yet distorted with a chilling despair. "Don't leave me here, I'm scared." I felt a breaking in my heart, a rupture of unresolved guilt and love. My hand instinctively reached out toward that visage, the raw memory of joy juxtaposed with the suffocating dread that enveloped us. The dying whispers amplified, screaming against my resolve, clawing at the fragile remnants of my sanity as the temptation loomed larger. "Think clearly," the specter urged, a cruel smile curling behind the shadows of its mask. "One soul for another, yours to keep or lose forever." "Oh," I screamed, recoiling as the weight of the decision pressed so heavily it felt like a tangible force holding me back. Stone walls cracked and groaned, shifting with rage as the shadows roared in unison, oscillating with discordant fury. The spectral form began to dissolve, teeth bared, a savage gleam reflecting in the darkness. "Make your choice." Desperation clawed at my throat. I felt the air shift, the house grimacing around me, gesturing violently, walls buckling under the strain of countless spirits entwined in sorrow, waiting. I closed my eyes, visions swirling the laughter of my family, now distorted and bittersweet, mingling with the cries of those beyond, lost among the eternal expanse of shadows. And then from somewhere deep within, a voice broke free, clear and resolute. It wasn't the whisper of the innocent child or the frantic pleas of those I loved. It was my own voice, raw and fueled by anguish. "I will not choose," I declared, the tremor in my heart giving way to an odd clarity. "I refuse to be a part of your wicked game." The shadows recoiled, a palpable shockwave shaking the room as I braced myself against the wall. The spectral figure howled, its voice a terrifying crescendo of fury and anguish. The walls throbbed with violent energy, the pictures shattering around me in a cacophony of glass and chaos, their souls unleashing an unholy wail. With a jolt, the ground surged beneath me, heaving as though it possessed a life of its own, and the very house shook, crying with rage as the shadows began to swallow everything whole. Dread encased my heart. I stumbled backwards, colliding with the staircase, my mind racing. I could feel the abyss pulling me closer into its depths, the screams of the lost souls blooming terrifyingly as their grasp tightened around me. And then I saw it behind the torrent of darkness. A flicker of light sparked, shimmering with hope, glimmering like a star in the night. It beckoned, a promise of salvation amid the ruins surrounding me. Could I brave the shadows? Plunging forward, I lunged toward the light, my breath a desperate pant as everything I knew began to collapse. But the darkness surged, clawing at my ankles, shadows entwining tighter, threatening to pull me back forever. In that moment of abject terror, I dove headfirst into the light, bracing for its embrace. And then, just as the darkness enveloped me, that whisper returned, echoing through my mind. "You should have chosen wisely." A blinding flash of realization pierced through the tumult, and as I vanished into the light, the last thing I heard was that voice, now a chilling giggle of delight echoing from the depths, a promise of far worse horrors still to come. The light enveloped me, brilliant and eager, like a warm embrace. It pulsated, wrapping around me as the darkness receded, swallowed by a vast, unyielding void. I felt weightless, suspended between two worlds, my corporeal form stitched together by that unearthly glow. Yet, as moments passed, the warmth began to ebb, leaving an icy tendril of dread curling back into my chest. Suddenly, I fell. The world tilted, and I plummeted into an overwhelming silence. Thump! I landed hard and gasped for air, my senses igniting as reality crashed back into focus. I found myself back in the grim hallway, but it was somehow war-sea grotesque mirage dulled by shadows that flickered like dying stars. The walls pulsated with an unspeakable malevolence, breathing in sync with the erratic rhythm of my heart. The air was thick, suffused with despair, as though the souls trapped within sought to reach me, their faces melting together in a surreal tableau of suffering. I staggered to my feet, disoriented and shaken, remnants of the light still clinging to my skin like a distant memory. Flickering lights above cast long, distorted shadows that danced around me, their movements unsettlingly human. Everywhere, faint whispers began to rise again, but now they held a different Tonian ominous chant blending despair and mockery, wrapping around my mind like a vice. "Welcome home," they hissed, slithering through the sound of my pounding pulse. I stumbled down the corridor, driven by desperation, a desperate need to escape this torment. Pictures that once held fond memories now morphed into grotesque parodies, each frame depicting a moment twisted, revealing phantoms in eternal anguish hidden beneath the surface. The realization struck me like ice water. The treachery of this place went beyond mere choices. It was a prison designed to siphon hope from its victims. My blood ran cold, heart pounding, as the shifting shapes in the corner of my vision grew more defined. Phantom silhouettes echoed my movements, footsteps pacing, cruel laughter born of a shared torment that reverberated through the very core of the house. That I turned sharply. But there was nothing there, just the lingering whisper of my name trailing into the recesses of a pitch-black void that yawned behind me. The darkness shifted warily like a predator, waiting for me to falter, to give in. Yet something glimmered at the far end of the hala, flickering bulb that fought valiantly against the encroaching shadows. Heart thundering, I made my way towards it, each step a challenge against the insistent tug of despair clawing at me from behind. The whispers intensified, a frantic crescendo driving me forward, each word 1,000 instruments of terror played against my ear. As I neared the light, a sensation prickled along my spine. The flickering illuminated a doorway half hidden in the gloom, a cracked portal that promised escape, though I could hear something lurking beyond. A low growl that sent chills straight through to my bones. "Don't leave," came a voice like a sigh, soft yet agonizingly familiar. It blossomed out of the shadows, resonating through the air. "Stay, we can share the suffering. So many of us, we are one now." My heart froze as I recognized the voice of my sibling. The innocence that once filled those entreating eyes. Now its tone was a haunting echo, coated in malice, laughter entwined with desperate cries. "Come back. I need you," it pleaded, and images flashed in my mind swinging in the sun. Laughter over a summer picnic, our shared secrets. But shadows twisted around those memories, filling them with wicked laughter. Turning hope into despair, I hesitated, torn. To go forward meant confronting the threat that loomed. To stay was to succumb, to become another whisper in this endless wailing from beyond. The decision weighed heavier upon me while the growling grew more distinct, rumbling in anticipation behind the door I so desperately wanted to reach. Just as I steadied my resolve to bolt for the doorway, the shadows surged forward, tendrils creeping up my legs, pulling me toward their embrace. Screaming, I spun around to shake them off, but the voices grew louder, invasive, echoing my name with an unholy fervor. Each call morphed into a sickly sweet melody as I began to lose ground against the darkness. "Join us, stay forever," they chorus, their voices weaving through the air, clawing into my thoughts, blending into my deep-seated fears. The very essence of my memories turned rancid, twisting my love into loathing. Then, with a final struggle against the onslaught, I lunged forward, grasping for the doorknob only for it to disappear in a flash of bone-chilling laughter, swallowed by the void behind me. The weight released its hold, but a darker presence surged forth, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows, grinning with a mouth full of jagged teeth, spilling forth a torrent of faded illusions. "You cannot escape," it hissed, extending a hand toward me. Revealing hollow eyes that promised untold agony, I stumbled back, but the atmosphere-warped walls pressed closer together, and laughter echoed endlessly, melding with deafening cries of the unloved. My heart sank deeper as I began to drown in despair, its icy grip tightening around my throat. And still, the shadows swelled and swirled closer, eager to claim me. As they whispered, "Choose again or join the endless dance of despair." Just as a scream clawed up my throat and darkness threatened to engulf me once more, the floor beneath me splintered, revealing a gaping chasm that beckoned with ancient promises of madness. With nowhere left to run, I teetered at the edge, one last thought echoing desperately in my mind: had I truly escaped? Or was this the beginning of a far worse nightmare? The chasm called, and I felt an undeniable pull, urging me into the depths below. And just as I began to fall, towards the unholy depths of the abyss, a chilling roar erupted from the shadows, resonating with the weight of 1,000 tormented souls. I realized, with spine-tingling dread, that whatever waited below hungered for my choice more than anything I'd ever known. The chasm gaped beneath me, an insatiable maw that seemed to murmur my name within its infinite darkness, a beckoning whisper filled with the taste of despair. Like bitter ash coating my tongue, the air, tinged with decay, churned around me, a tempest of sensation that both repelled and lured me in. I hesitated, my heart pounding with dread. Just as I realized I had no choice, a cacophony of disembodied voices surged up from the void. They blended into a nightmarish symphonia, harmonic convergence of regrets and abandoned dreams. Fall, 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 they intoned, a chilling cadence that smoothed my panic into surrender. Yet before I could tumble into the waiting darkness below, a stray memory broke through, fierce and sharp like shards of glass glinting against the black. The face of someone I used to trust. A fleeting image caught in whims of laughter. Desperation rose up like bile. I had to remember. I had to fight. Screaming, I closed my eyes tightly and imagined the warmth of hands that wrapped around mine in childhood. The sound of laughter blooming like spring flowers amidst a looming storm. But the voices rose, suffocating that warmth with their sickly, sweet torment. You don't need them. They abandoned you. Embrace this fear. There's no one else now. The shadows were inches away, their stench mingling with memories, a blend of smoke and sorrow scented with the blood of hopes long extinguished. Before I could mourn those lost moments, a searing laughter erupted from the depths, reverberating through every fiber of my being. The shadows writhed and twisted, taking form, converging into grotesque assemblages of faces morphed with anguish and delight, their mouthless screams filling the air with chaos. And then, just as the gaping darkness loomed perilously close, I felt the floor beneath me shift again, splintering further. With a cracking groan, the very fabric of reality thinned, threatening to tear apart, allowing tendrils of the void to spill into my world. Was this truly the end? Or was it merely a passageway into something worse? Panic surged, urging me to leap before the abyss pulled me down. Before my body could act on instinct, a shadow burst forth from behind me, an entity that shimmered like polished obsidian, swirling in a furious dance of terror. It shot past, grasping the edges of the chasm like a predatory beast watching its prey. The faces within the shadows morphed into grotesque grins, a revelry of eternal suffering witnessing my impending doom. Join us, they chanted in an exultant chorus. At that moment, the world quaked violently, and I fell sideways, yanked by the force of desperation. My fingertips grazed the crumbling edges of the chasm, the instantaneous thrill of gravity's embrace forcing me into a spiral of panic. I clutched desperately at the splintering wood, terrified of what lay beneath. But the shadows knew my fear, wrapping around my wrists, lifting me toward that insatiable abyss from which no light could escape. Amidst the frenzy, a piercing cry clawed back through the cacophonious sound that shattered the oppressive haze of dread. Don't give in, propelled me back, anchoring me to something real. My sibling? I didn't know. But it was a tether woven from the ribbons of hope that struggled against shadows gnawing at my will. Fueled by a desperate surge of certainty, I pushed against the encroaching darkness, and with a sudden, violent twist, I wrenched myself towards the fraying remnants of the hallway beyond. The shadows shrieked in anguish, fractions of my old life swirling within them, pleading for my return. Yet, I felt the weight of their despair dissipate like smoke. Just as I lunged for the remnants of light, the long flickering bulb that had always flickered hope within meth ground shuddered violently. The shadows, no longer tethered, surged upwards with a vengeance, reaching toward me like skeletal hands emerging from the grave. And in that moment of mad resolve, with my heart hammering in my chest, I hurled myself forward into the warm glow of defiance. The shadows writhed, shrieking in desperation. Behind me, just as I touched the brightness, piercing brilliance enveloped my being, and a sensation of crushing force erupted from below. A sinister snap echoed through the hallway, as if the very fabric of the house was writhing in pain. I felt my body jerk violently, the light flickering, and then everything went dark. Something very real gripped my ankle with a violent ferocity, dragging me back into the inky void I had eluded for just a second too long. A scream lodged in my throat as I caught the glimmer of countless eyes watching from the abyss, hungry and envious. Then, only darkness remained. Claustrophobic, suffocating absence of light, accompanied by a resonant laughter that echoed like thunder through my mind, reverberating until it became my own echo blended with theirs. And as I spiraled down, I realized I was but a thread in this gaping universe's tapestry. And the final terrifying thought that slammed into me as I plummeted deeper was not of fear or regret, but of acceptance. The void was alive and it was expecting me. I awoke to an oppressive silence, the suffocating weight of darkness draping over me like a heavy shroud. I tried to shift, to find purchase against the palpable fear that surrounded me, but my body felt heavy, as if anchored to the ground by invisible chains. For a moment, I couldn't tell if my eyes were open or closed. The void was thick and suffocating, swallowing any remnants of light before they could pierce through. But then I heard Ida's faint whisper, a haunting echo that tugged at the very core of my being. "You are one of us now." Ida's voice laced with hollow laughter and endless longing, sliding through the cracks of my resolve. I felt it tugging on the edges of my consciousness, whispering sweet nothings filled with promises of comfort, belonging. "Stay with us?" it urged in that venomous inflection, sprouting from the marrow of darkness. "Oh," I gasped, fighting back against the tide of despair rising around me. "I will not succumb." The words were flimsy, almost laughable against the looming persistence of the shadows encircling me. Their whispers growing louder, morphing into a cacophony of anguish, a chaotic symphony of tortured souls crying out for release, their torment woven into an intricate tapestry of suffering. For every shadow that brushed against my skin, I caught fleeting glimpses of faces pale, sorrowful, full of dread. They were once familiar, woven from the fabric of my memories, now distorted into grotesque parodies of remorse. They reached out to me, their mouths opening in eternal screams, begging for salvation from the hollow abyss that consumed them. What had I unleashed upon myself? As I clutched the depths of my defiance like a lifeline, a piercing light cut through the palpable darkness. It flickered, blossoming into brilliance, almost blinding. I squinted against the radiant glow, feeling its warmth seep into the very marrow of my bones, soothing the chaos within and momentarily driving the shadows back. "Follow the light," the echo whispered again. But this time, it wasn't the voice of despair. It was something different, something human, something familiar. It pulled me inch by agonizing inch, anchoring me back to sanity through the tempest that threatened to envelop me entirely. With each step toward the light, the shadows screeched, recoiling in horror as if light itself was an enemy. I stumbled forward, propelled by an instinct to survive, the faces in the darkness writhing, their coal-black eyes filled with accusation and longing. "Leave her!" they wailed, voices converging in furious dissonance. "Join us. Be one of us. Embrace the darkness." But I would not yield. I pushed onward, fighting through despair's suffocating grip, each breath a scream against the dark. And just as I reached the threshold of that flickering brilliance, a chilling realization struck me. The echoes that surrounded me were not simply remnants of lost souls, they were pieces of my own dark history, unrelenting reminders of the choices I had made, the loved ones I had abandoned, the moments forever lost. A sudden wave of clarity washed over me. This experience, the torment, the fear, it was not merely a punishment. It was a reflection of who I had become, the collective weight of my choices cascading down upon me like the unyielding flood of shadows. As I lunged into the light, it enveloped me completely, swathing me in warmth. But then came the darkness again, swirling around me, grasping at my throat like vines of guilt. Behind me, I felt the weight of the wailing voices surge with a primal rage. "You cannot escape," they whispered, echoing their sinister promise. "You are ours as we are yours. Embrace it, little one." With that, the world staggered and pitched, the luminance flickering ominously. The light grew dimmer, replaced by the hungry shadows eager to pull me back into their collective agony. My heart raced as I felt the undeniable pull of their despair. Even stronger now, it felt like a gravitational force demanding my submission. Just then, a piercing wail erupted, a voice filled with pure terror. I could hear the woman, from the mirror, trapped beneath the sheer weight of longing and loss. "Remember who you are," she pleaded, a raw desperation weaving through her words. "Break this cycle. You have the power to change." In that moment of clarity, the fear coalesced into resolution, presenting a choice far more profound than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about escaping. It was about confronting the reality I had refused to acknowledge. Very little remained of the person who had stepped into that cursed house long ago. I'd become a vessel, seduced by darkness, feeding its hunger with every moment of doubt. Shaking, I turned back toward the brooding shadows, resolute. "I refuse," I shouted, my voice echoing defiantly through the void. "I will not fall prey to this torment. I choose to face my past." In that instant, the swirling shadows convulsed violently, the faces contorting in fury as I stepped forward, the radiant light engulfing me completely. I surrendered fully to its warmth, feeling it cradle my fractured essence, binding the painful edges together with an enduring glow. And just as the shadows lunged forward to snatch me away, something unexpected happened. The light exploded, blinding and searing, consuming the darkness around me, imploding into the air like a supernova. I felt a rush of vortex of energy pulling everything within its reach into one radiant pulse. For one brief moment, I became more than flesh. I lost the edges of my being, merging into the very essence of light, warmth, and truth. The shadows screamed, howling in agony, faces recoiling into oblivion, leaving only the breathless emptiness behind. Then, in a heartbeat, it all vanished. The sensation of weightlessness dissolved, and I landed with a soft thud on familiar ground. I blinked furiously, disoriented. I found myself standing outside the house, the familiar facade looming before me, now mundane in the light of day. But that wasn't the worst of it. As I turned to take in the scene, dread coiling in my stomach, I realized with a chill that the whispers hadn't vanished entirely. Shadows lurked in the corners of my vision, whispering my name, beckoning sweetly, and oh, this was not over. The house remained alive, pulsating with unholy energy, an infinite cycle of despair waiting to ensnare the next unsuspecting soul. I took a trembling step back, heart racing, instinct screaming there was no escaping this horror. And then, I heard it again, the laughter, twisted and full of malice, echoing through the biting wind. "You can't escape what you've become," it taunted, rumbling like distant thunder that refused to relent. "No," I gasped, realization dawning cold and cruel. Darkness still sought to reclaim its own, and as the house's door swung open once more, inviting me back into the swirling maelstrom of despair, I understood with chilling clarity what I had become. Not a savior, but a harbinger of twisted hope, because there is a certain horror in acceptance, and the most terrifying truth of all: the house never lets go of its own.